Hello everyone, I'm Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. And in this video, I want to talk about how humanity governs itself. Now, please note that I did not say government, I said governing. That is an important distinction because, as I've said before, I try to avoid larger political discussions on this channel. I do not want my world to become lost in the chaos of the political scene on YouTube. There are plenty of other channels out there that talk about contemporary politics from multiple parts of the spectrum, and they're run by people far smarter and far more qualified than I'll ever be. That said, I don't deny that I have my share of political leanings, but I prefer to keep them private, at least for now. So with that being said, I want to talk about governing from a broader perspective. Not just focusing on one country, one region, or even one particular form of governing. I want to take a step back and really scrutinize the very concept of humans governing other humans. Because anyone who follows the news, even in small measured doses, can see some undeniable flaws in our current methods of governing. There's so much corruption at every level, from politicians who take bribes to representatives who only cater to their donors. It's not just in Western-style democracies either. You can see just as much corruption in authoritarian regimes, be they military dictatorships in South America and East Asia, to the oil-producing monarchies of the Middle East. Whether they're low-level bureaucrats or full-blown kings, their chief concern isn't the people they serve, it's how they'll enrich themselves, keep their job, or in some way take advantage of whatever power and wealth they have. And no matter how small or large, it's still corrupt. But that just covers the bureaucratic side of governing. Dig even deeper and you'll find flaws on a systemic level. In major democracies, you'll find governments where a radical few can derail policies favored by the vast majority of citizens. Here in America, where I live, policies like Medicare for All and universal background checks for firearms are wildly popular. A huge chunk of the population supports this, but thanks to a select few politicians, most of which are funded by radical interest groups, we don't have it. It's not just frustrating, people actually suffer and die as a result of these policies not being enacted. It's a real, intractable flaw, one we can't fix because a select few just won't allow it. Go outside of America and you'll find plenty of other imperfections. In countries like Russia, China, Venezuela, and Saudi Arabia, the needs and wants of the people really don't matter that much. Everything is done on the whim of despots and dictators. And if you don't like it, or even dare criticize it, well, that form of governing doesn't mind making you disappear. No matter where you go in this world, you're bound to find imperfect methods of governance. Along with death and taxes, it seems you really can't escape inept governing. Whine about it all you want, cheer your favorite leaders all you want. Those perfections just don't go away. And even when some do, others will emerge. Now, if I'm giving the impression that I'm some sort of cynical anti-government type, I apologize. That is not the message I'm trying to send here. There actually are genuinely good people working in government. There are also genuinely good kings, rulers, senators, and presidents. People who actually do right by their people. We just don't hear about it that much because it rarely makes for exciting news. But there's another side to this concept of flawed governance, and it actually has nothing to do with whoever is governing. Because on some levels, we the people are just as responsible for those flaws. It's not always the politicians, the rulers, or the despots. Governing is a two-way street, even in authoritarian regimes. And sometimes, the people are just as big a problem as any governing authority. And I think we all know this on some level. We all probably know someone who scares us with their political opinions, their knowledge, or where they get their news. And the idea that they can vote is somewhat disconcerting. And the idea that there are many people who share that same sentiments is legitimately scary. But even if you step outside the world of democracies, the people still play a role. Just look at the rise of every charismatic dictator or despot. They could not have succeeded without the support of a large contingent of people. And not all those people were brainwashed followers either. Some were just caught up in a trend, or some just wanted to destroy what they perceived as a flawed system. It has happened all throughout human history, for as long as we've had civilization. And it keeps happening today, albeit on a different scale. You could definitely make the case that we're governing ourselves better today than we did 100 years ago, or even 50 years ago. But again, there are still plenty of flaws, injustices, and atrocities. The world is just too chaotic, and people in general are just too tribal and short-sighted. And our various systems of governing just don't reform or adapt fast enough. Now, there are things we can do to improve those systems, and we absolutely should, not just in one part of the world, but in all parts. However, we can never achieve a truly perfect form of governance, and not just because we live in an imperfect world, but because we're all imperfect people. That fact matters a great deal because it's a universal flaw of every form of governance. Imperfect people trying to govern large swaths of imperfect people, utilizing institutions that will always be at the mercy of the imperfect individuals operating them. And because we humans aren't wired for long-term thinking, that often results in some rather nasty cycles. Once you get to a certain age, you can even see those cycles. I know I have, and I don't follow politics nearly as closely as others. It usually goes something like this. A certain status quo emerges in a country or community. Some are dissatisfied with it. There are reasons ranging from economic opportunities to social issues. They start protesting and complaining. Then, some opportunistic individuals emerge, often with political ambitions, and they promise to fix the system. If they fail to get elected, then that just upsets the dissatisfied masses even more. And they keep on protesting until another opportunist comes along. Eventually, some of them gain power, either by a democratic election or some other means. They may or may not keep their promises, but in doing so, other groups become dissatisfied. That or fixing one problem creates many others. Time goes on, a new status quo emerges, but because no system is perfect and not everyone is happy, more dissatisfaction follows, and the cycle continues. I've personally seen that cycle play out in my own community. I've also seen it play out in national elections, both in America and in other countries. In this imperfect society, there will always be people who get left behind or disadvantaged. Sometimes those conditions don't even have to be real. Enough people just have to think they're being screwed over, and that's more than enough to keep the cycle going. In fact, when you follow these imperfections to the extreme, it has some rather distressing implications. It implies that even if human beings could live in a perfect system of governance, one that maximized the well-being of every individual to the greatest extent possible, it still wouldn't be enough. Because people would just invent a reason to be dissatisfied and resentful. That may seem fatalistic, but to some extent, we've already seen this kind of invented grievance played out. Believe it or not, everyone watching this video now is living in the most peaceful time we've ever had as a species. I know it doesn't seem like that, given our narrow frame of reference. But if you just look at history as a whole, as well as some of the other data we have, then it's pretty clear. We are all much safer, healthier, and more prosperous than our ancestors were. From crime to war to poverty, it has all declined considerably over the past 100 years. But again, that sort of stuff doesn't make the news. And that doesn't stop people from feeling like they're oppressed or disadvantaged, even when they're not by most measures. This leads me back to the bigger picture, as well as the title of this video. Because it's not a thought experiment or some elaborate hypothetical. It's a legitimate question. Can humanity truly govern itself effectively? And can it do so in the long run? I believe this is a relevant question today because, unlike the first several thousand years of civilization, the stakes are a lot higher now. Humanity didn't used to have weapons of mass destruction like nuclear bombs. At this very moment, multiple countries have nuclear arsenals that, if launched, would render this planet uninhabitable to humans. In the past, empires and governments rose and fell all the time. But their collapse didn't mean the potential extinction of the human race. These days, that's a real possibility. And as we develop technology that's capable of even greater destruction, then the stakes only get higher. At some point, is it even safe or wise for humans to be governing themselves? Will there ever come a point where putting a human in charge of something like an antimatter bomb is just too dangerous? In a world where governments can only ever react inefficiently to increasingly complex challenges, is there a point where such governance just isn't unfeasible? It's dangerous? Personally, and this is just my opinion, I do believe that point exists. And while I don't think we've reached that point just yet, we may do so in the future. I don't know if it'll be within my lifetime, but I think it will happen. We will get to a point where human governance, as we know it, just can't be done safely or effectively. But what's the alternative? Is there an alternative? Those are all open questions, and I'll leave it to others far smarter than me to pose an answer. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for joining me in my world. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and until next time, take care and stay safe.